neocon Catholics that I hear on the radio and you see on television, those who speak more specifically about theology, like on EWTN, the Eternal Word television network, they never get to the source of it, that this is all a product of Freemasonry, the thinking of Freemasonry. They never nail the cause. They always gripe and complain about the symptoms. They have connections through their association in the Knights of Columbus, and they've been rubbing elbows with Masonry for the last 20, 25 years, and they don't want to offend anybody.
Didn't we view the same scenario in the Congress of the United States? Everybody knew that
there had been rumors about Congressman Foley, of which the majority of my class were aware of during my tenure in D.C.
And the rumors were?
Well, there was a moniker by which we described Foley. It was FFF, and it came to turn out that that stand for Foley the Fag from Florida.
Then we see none of the members of Congress standing up or speaking out. They all knew who he was, and he was a close friend and associate of George Walker Bush and then Ted Haggard.
Every one of us have demons that are assigned to make us fail.
He was head of this evangelical group, a true flamer, but nobody seems to stand up. Is this true within the congregations of the Catholic Church when we see one fellow named Donald, a.k.a. Donna? It's well known amongst some of the insiders that he likes boys. I mean, why hasn't this been... Why hasn't somebody stood up?
I thank the leaders of the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast. I'm honored to be in the presence of Archbishop Donald Worrell. I have known the Archbishop for quite a while. I appreciate his strong and firm dedication to making sure every child in America gets a good education.
I think there's a certain political correctness about it. And also, Anthony, if you're really going to try to practice your faith, there's a certain element of maintaining charity. You know, how does one address a problem without offending God at the same time?
A norm against which we can measure who we are, what is right, and what truly constitutes a good and just society.
I know, you know, thousands of people are aware of this one particular problem within the Catholic Church. If somebody doesn't take a stand and mention the name.
As I understand it, there's a network of people like this within the institutional church, and they cover for each other. There's a Catholic writer named Michael Rose, and there's a book called Goodbye, Good Men. It's about seminarians who were kicked out of the seminary for being Orthodox. And it turned out that there's a network of homosexuals in the seminary and also among the faculty that will make sure that they don't make it through their studies and become ordained priests. And there was another book by a Catholic author named Paul Lakutis, Am Church Comes Out. And it's this new modernist church where everything's very liberal, everything's socially acceptable, there's no problem. I mean, don't make any waves about these things. Morality, well, again, it's this indifferentism. The people that are in this mix sociologically have more to lose if they make waves, and they don't want to do that.
There's one fellow that I've seen, he seems to have a dual personality, like the part that was played by Anthony Perkins in the movie Psycho. He talks about mother. In fact, he even becomes this mother. Very effeminate looking, but he's married, apparently, just like Ted Haggard is married. But he assumes the sort of a cross identity, or it's like not a cross dresser, but a cross talker.
And she used to say, she told me once I get an inspiration, I never question it. I figure God has a plan, and you see, that's how God's providence works. This is the scary thing about it. If you don't go, He won't go.
He's written a couple of books about Mother Angelica, and apparently they're bestsellers. And Mother Angelica is the Franciscan nun who founded EWTN, Eternal Word Television Network, and highly esteemed, good, two-fisted, tell-it-like-it-is theologian. Everyone really liked her. and she suffered some setbacks in her health. There was a stroke a couple of years ago on
I
Christmas.
thought you were talking about him. He assumes the identity of mother, like Tony Perkins.
Yeah.
It's scary to watch this guy.
It's embarrassing to watch. He's mimicking her. It seems disrespectful to me, and I guess he thinks it's funny.
Well, I think it's scary. It looks like an Alfred Hitchcock movie.
As a Catholic, when I see it, I don't like it because I feel it's demeaning to her. And yet he's written a couple of books based on her life and is enjoying a fair amount of success from it. But you're right, and he'll have a captive audience when he's addressing a group at a gathering like the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast. They're held hostage, and they have to listen to this.
Well, I've seen this National Prayer Conference of Catholics. I see somebody like George Bush, somebody called him the first Catholic president.
Yeah, that was last year, 2006.
It's like having Satan himself come before this crowd of Catholics, and they applaud him.
I'm proud to be here with Archbishop Samby, the apostolic nuncio to the United States.
I hope for their sake that they're genuinely ignorant about his background and what his determination really is. I hope so, for their sake.
They had continued to do business with their primary Nazi patron, who was Fritz Thyssen, who backed Hitler beginning in 1921 and who was the wealthiest man in Germany, and a steel and coal baron who, with his partner Friedrich Flick, essentially built the Nazi war machine along with I.G. Farben. In 1951, when Fritz Thyssen died in Argentina, Union Banking Corporation was liquidated by the U.S. government, and Prescott Bush received $1.5 million for his holdings in his Nazi business, and that was the beginning of the Bush family fortune for all intents and purposes. George Bush doesn't take his philosophical foundation from the Bible or the teachings of Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. George Bush takes his inspiration from what he learned in Skull and Bones and from the Thule Society that Hitler and Goebbels and Goring cut their teeth in, Bohemian Grove, these evil organizations that perpetrate the ugly things that these criminals are doing to this country, for which they must be held accountable.
In the year 2000, they had the delay in determining who won the election, and they had the famous Chads incident. It's a funny coincidence. The final determination was made on December 12th, on the feast day of Our Lady of Guadalupe. And so somehow it suggests that his election as president was appointed by God. It has God's approval.
Well,
because I've seen other coincidences on Catholic feast days as well that correspond with certain events as they took place. And I began to look at this with some suspicion.
I see happening in the Catholic Church what I see happening in the Protestant Church, and that is that the evangelicals, the prostitute preachers, those who are preaching the Judas Goat gospel, are listening to priests and pastors who are leading us not out of the desert into the promised land, but from the promised land into the desert to die. I mean, they're supporting war.
Yeah, quite literally the Iraqi desert and the deserts of Afghanistan and who knows where else.
Our soldiers, like Pat Tillman, thought, well, we should come to the fore, we should stand up and fight. He got over there and found out that this was a phony war and was about to talk. He's killed by, they say, friendly fire, not by the enemy, but maybe by the enemy within, maybe by a contractor.
It is widely discussed now that Pat Tillman was killed by so-called friendly fire, and my conclusion was that may not have been accidental, and there's plenty of good reason to believe it might not have been accidental. That's what murder is, killing on purpose. Yeah, I think there's a very, very strong indication that it was more than just an accident of spray fire. The reason we suspect this is that he was very much opposed to the war in Iraq, and had said so to his family, his close allies, and had raised the issue literally hundreds of times with members of his family.
Pat Tillman had a very, very successful football career. He gave that up in huge amounts of money, a tremendous fortune, to go to the Middle East and Central Asia because he believed that the attack came from Afghanistan that was against our country on 9/11. What he didn't know was that it was a false flag operation by insiders in our own government.
Pat Tillman, who was killed by, after they made him a hero, he's killed in battle. It was friendly fire. Probably it's going to turn out he was probably murdered by other men in his outfit. Who was there beside these military police? Military intelligence, CIA, Navy SEALs sometimes, civilian contractors from Titan Corporation.
I still want to pursue this question about this P4 memo. The P4 memo was sent to 3 generals, to Kensinger, Abizaid, and Brown. And the memo is advising these generals to let the Secretary of Defense and others know that there may be a problem if they refer to how Pat Tillman was killed. How is that believable that 3 generals wouldn't send up the chain of command a memo like this?